Hey folks, Happy New Year. I hope you guys have all been well. Today I figured I would do a review on the rigged Ultra Swing that I bought for my truck, because I actually went to 35s on this truck and that's been great. But I realized that, you know, the regular spare tire was not going to cut it in case I needed it. So I decided, instead of doing a full rear bumper, cut and all that stuff, I would just do the Ultra Swing, which has its pros and it has its cons. We're going to talk about that in this video and give you guys that insight of my experience with it so far, and give you guys my recommendation on it. So with all that being said, let's get to it. All right, so I just want to show you guys how this operates so you guys kind of get a sense of stuff. Now, one of the things I noticed is a lot of high clearance bumpers these days are only coming in 2 swing arm configurations versus 1. Not really sure why that is. Maybe it's a popularity choice, but something to consider, because when you have 1 swing arm versus 2, you kind of have to think a little bit about your parking situation. And luckily here, I've got enough parking here where 1 arm would work well for me. If I had 2, then it's, just requires you to have room on both sides, because you got to remember a tire is going to stick out. If you put, jerry cans or anything else, it's also going to create more space that you need when you're opening to get access to your back. So that could be a problem. But this is a totally different setup and actually provides a lot of convenience. And so I took the tire off for now because I think it's easier to show you guys how this works. But this particular tire plate actually has adjustments built in. So you can run this with, I got it set up right here for my Toyota because the rim has the Toyota bolt pattern here and I can just slap on my wheel. But, if I ever wanted to use this on a different vehicle that had a different bolt pattern, these, you just loosen them on the back and they adjust, and you can run a different spare setup on that particular vehicle. So I like that this is universal, but they also do offer an actual plate only for a Toyota. So it's up to you. I think the pros and cons are this. This is a little bit more difficult to set up. So you really got to play with it a little bit and then tighten them down, see if you can get the tire on and then tighten them down once you got it right. It's a little bit of extra work, but once you get it, it's set. It would be a lot easier though if you're only going to run Toyota and you got the Toyota plate and the Toyota rim just fits right on it. So just keep that in mind. Now, that being said, here's how you open this up. There is a little handle here which unlocks it, and then usually you're going to have to come this way. From the back, there's a pinhole here which you're just going to pop out, and once you do that, you can push and this arm does swing open. Now, that's this is about as open as you can get the arm to swing. There is a little locking mechanism here, which, you can take that bolt out and it'll swing out a little bit more, but it's there for safety. You really don't need it to go out further than that. And you don't want it to go too much farther out where it might put too much stress on this joint or snap off or God knows what else. But that for me it's adjustable, and I think that's exactly where I need it, because when I go to open my back, when the tailgate comes down, it needs to clear the license plate, and this is the right angle for that. So I'm showing this to you to point out that you need it to open out that wide every single time if you want access to your trunk or your bed, I mean. So why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem because what if you're parked next to another car? You might not have that room there. So just keep that in mind. But all that being said, take a look at this arm closer. So as you can see here, it goes right into your 2-inch hitch, which is here. And it does require, your standard lock or pin here. You can get them from anywhere. That does not come with it. And it does have a bolt right through the middle here that goes to a mechanism for anti-wobble, which means you tighten that bolt and it's supposed to snug this up and basically make this arm tight, as in almost like it's part of the frame. Therefore, you know, when you have a big heavy wheel on there, it's not going to wobble around or rattle off or anything like that. And I think they've done a pretty good job with that. Although I will say, even though I've tightened that to pretty much as tight as it'll go, I used an impact wrench to do so. It still kind of wobbles a little bit. And that's because the 35 that I put on here, which is the maximum size they recommend, is just really, really heavy. So kind of keep that in mind, guys. The heavier it is, the more weight you got back here, the more wobble it's gonna have. And I think it does have a little bit of wobble, even though it's mostly dialed out. Now, the swing arm itself weighs about 65 pounds. And then add accessories, like I've got this little table here, which I'll show you here in a second. And then add your wheel. And I don't know how much my wheel weighs, but it's probably about 100 pounds. I mean, with the tire and the rim, I mean, I'm just guessing. So already there, we're looking at, you know, 165 pounds-ish. That's a lot of weight, guys, to be hanging off your hitch, and expect it to be totally rigid. So keep that in mind. It's okay, but I just want to set expectations. The next thing is, when you have the setup in place, your rear view camera, which is located right here, is now obsolete. You're not going to be able to use that. And so you have to buy their camera kit, and you can see the camera here, which is extra. And I think this was about, I don't know, 200, 225, something like that, extra on top of the swing arm. So kind of keep that in mind. This is kind of a requirement unless you don't care about your rear view camera. So, but this right here, I have a love-hate relationship with it, and I'll tell you why. So first off, your wiring for your stock camera is actually just underneath this bumper section here, which really not too bad. It's just a clip, you unclip it, and then you plug this one in, and it'll work just like your rear view camera would work normally when you put it in reverse. So super easy to do. My problem with this camera is in its placement. I just don't love where they recommend you place this particular camera, because where before I felt like in the car, I've got a perfectly central view and it allows me to back into spots really easy. This is off-centered more so, and it really showcases that. And then not just that, but you see it's got this extra piece that comes off here, and this is so that you can still use this to tow, because again, your hitch is here, it just extends your hitch, and you can tow up to, it says 10,000 pounds here. So that's good. So you still have towing capabilities, but it means that your camera is going to be off-center. And it also means that in your camera view, you're gonna get the side of this part of the hitch. So you got less visibility, you know, it's a little off center, so it makes it a little difficult to kind of orientate yourself until you get used to it. That's just my perspective living with this for about a month and a half now. The other thing is, and I will give some credit to this camera, its low light performance is actually, I find it to be a little bit better than the stock camera that comes with the truck up here. So that's a positive. But you can see when the swing door is closed, that's really the only place it could really go. I mean, I've thought about maybe placing it on the arm here itself, where you would have to maybe drill a hole here, or maybe even put it inside of here. I mean, there's things you could do, but again, you've got the wheel here, and that wheel really does block a lot of the views and options. And so because of that, this is really the only place that I saw it being the perfect fit. Now, there is one thing you could do. You could actually place a camera in the hitch here, which would actually solve a lot of problems, but then you lose the ability to plug in more accessories or tow with your truck. So it's kind of like give and take, just something for you guys to be aware of. Now, while I got the hitch or the swing arm closed here, I also want to point out one other thing, which is because of the swing door closing up, it actually blocks your license plate. And that is, you know, a big no-no. You don't want to get pulled over and have issues. And so you do need the license plate relocation kit. It's a few bucks extra because of the lighting, which this lighting actually just plugs in here into your 4-pin hitch. So I just plugged it in and then routed the power around so it's out of the way. But as you can see, it relocates your license plate, and you know, it does a good job of lighting and all that stuff. Even with the wheel here, it's visible, although from this direction, you probably won't see the license plate, so you really have to see it from this side, but it is visible. You can adjust this a little bit, but the farther out you go, you're gonna find that it actually starts to create challenges when you're opening your tailgate, because if this is too far out, now your tailgate will actually hit this. So you're gonna have to remove this pin and allow the swing arm to actually go out even further in order to clear your tailgate. So just be aware of that. But before we talk about anything else, this is one of the cool things, is the actual little table I got, which was extra. I think this is about 400 bucks. It opens like that. And now you've got what I consider to be a pretty sturdy surface for your camp stove. And it does actually have a cutting board that comes out. The cutting board is not really that good, to be honest. I mean, sure, it is a cutting board surface, but I found it to be flimsy when it was pulled out. And I just know when I'm off-roading and I'm camping out somewhere, I'm just not gonna use that, especially because I've got the tailgate here, which is, you know, I'm running a Mountain Hatch tailgate, which is antibacterial, and I can use that to cut up stuff and it's fine. But I do like the fact that this is relatively sturdy. I mean, I'm pushing down pretty hard, you can see I'm wiggling, but if I'm camping and just cooking on this, it frees up some space here. Obviously with my tailgate down, it gives me more of a kitchen feel. So it's worth having this piece. I just removed the cutting board, and that saved a little weight and got rid of some stuff I'm not going to use and gave me the functionality I wanted regardless. Now, I will say another thing. With the cutting board installed, this lock is pretty tight, but if you remove the cutting board, I don't know if you can hear that, it creates a little bit of play, and so it wiggles a little bit, makes a little noise. You don't hear the noise in the truck, and it's not gonna come loose on the road or anything, but just know it's a little bit annoying. My OCD kicks in there. It is kind of nice though. You do have a bottle opener here, so you can crack open a beer or whatever, so that's kind of cool. So let me go ahead and close this up. And when you're closing this up, you're gonna wanna put the pin in, right, so, and that's it. So now the swing is secure and you're good to go. So, that's a lot of the functionality stuff about the swing arm, and it also hopefully gives you guys some insight on actually owning this, what it's really like. I will say though it kind of, like when I was purchasing it, I thought, well, this is a great solution because I could kind of plug it on when I want to go on a trip and have my spare wheel on there and everything's great. And then when I don't need it, I just remove it. But as you guys can see, this thing is becoming more or less permanent because of the camera being wired in as well as the license plate. So just having that stuff wired up appropriately, which you should do, it kind of means the swing arm is always going to be on the truck. So here's the pros and cons of that is, well, the pro is, okay, great. Now I got a spare tire carrier anytime I need it. And obviously, you know, that's good. But the cons are, well, now you're carrying more weight, right? Almost for no reason at this point. If I'm just cruising around town and stuff, I'm not running my spare tire because it's just so heavy. And I transport my dogs all the time. So opening and closing this swing arm all the time, it just gets a little tiring. And with the extra wheel here and the extra weight, it's just a little bit of a pain, but it's nice to have it when I go on a trip because I know if I'm gonna get a flat or if I'm going off-roading or something, it's a necessity. So for that reason, I'm keeping it on. It's just, you know, the fact of the matter is this thing is permanent if you're gonna go this route until you decide to actually chop up your bumper and get an actual rear bumper fitted, right? So a customer bumper. And if I'm gonna do it, I would do a high clearance, which means, you know, you're gonna be cutting the side here, getting rid of all this stuff. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention, and it's worth mentioning, is if you have your parking sensors here and here, expect that with this swing arm, they're gonna be just, you're gonna put it in reverse, it's just gonna be binging the whole time because it is picking up the signal here. So in your truck, you could just push the P button, right, to take off the parking sensors. So that's kind of nice that you don't have to do anything else, you just turn them off. And from that perspective, you don't get the binging inside the car every time you go in reverse, but you do now have no parking sensors. So something else to be aware of. This is not a perfect solution by any stretch of the imagination. Now, that being said, based on all the adjustments that you get here with where you can put the tire carrier, which I have it on the highest setting, it does not interfere with my rear view mirror, so I can see through here still, which is good. If you don't have a camper like I do, you can move this down and place the wheel lower down. However, again, your camera might get blocked, so you might have to get creative with where you place your rear view camera if you're gonna go with the camera as well. So keep that in mind. But outside of all these challenges, what this gives you is the ability to basically have a spare wheel, which is great because underneath the truck, I don't need to run a spare anymore. And my 35 doesn't actually fit in that underneath carrier. So you're losing that weight, right? And just placing the weight here. But I do think that for now, this is worth it. And I'll tell you what everything costs here in a second. So one other thing before we talk about cost is this, I think the rigid swing arm here is one of the best options you could get, mostly because this thing is expandable. As you can see, they've invested a lot of engineering into not just having a tire carrier, but look, I have a table on here, camera system, relocation kit for the license plate, and you can get an extra section here which allows you to carry rotopacks, high lift jacks, whatever else you can think of. So this is expandable and it can take more weight. I forget how much this actually can bear, but I think it's right around like 250 to 300 pounds, something like that. So it's significant. So take it as you will, but I think if you're like me and you're not quite ready to chop up your rear bumper and go that route, this is a great option, okay? However, if you're a serious off-roader, one thing that you're probably already thinking while watching this is you still have a clearance issue here in the sense that your rear departure angle, is still not very good now. Where if you have a high clearance bumper, raising all that stuff up, it's, not an issue. For me, I just don't have a lot of trails around me that are a problem in that respect. So not really an issue, but I do think at some point I will go with a high clearance bumper. I'm just not ready yet. Now, all that being said, I think those are the pros and the cons of the swing arm. Now let's talk about what things cost. The swing arm itself was right around $1,600. Not exactly cheap, but for that money, you do get the basic frame, which allows you to carry your spare wheel up to a 35. So keep that in mind. And it is powder coated from the factory, which is very nice. And I say that because a lot of systems are going to be bare metal. So does that matter to you or not? That's for everybody to decide. But for me, I like that it's powder coated and also that it's expandable, right? So $400 gets you the table with the cutting board, okay? $225 gets you the rear view camera, and I think it's about $60 for the license plate light kit. So, all in, we're looking at about, this setup here is right around $2,500. It's a lot of money, I know. But for that money, I mean, if you think about it, it's allowing me to have peace of mind when I do go off-roading without having to worry about really spending $4,000 to $5,000 for a true custom rear bumper. So, I mean, realistically, rear bumpers, they start around $3,500, I mean, give or take. But once you include you know, powder coating them. Then you include the accessories you want, and then install if you're not going to install it yourself, which I think most of them you could install yourself. It just requires you to be comfortable cutting up your truck a little bit. Well, you're right around $4 to $5 grand. That's a lot more. So that's double the price of this. And keep in mind, this is 100% reversible. So I felt like I could run this for now. When I'm ready, I can do the full rear bumper and then recoup some cash from this later on. So, but in the interim, it's given me the functionality I need. I'm finding it to be, you know, pretty convenient and overall good solution. I wish it was a little cheaper, but when you really look at all the Ultra arms that exist, I mean, this is probably the best one on the market. I do think it's pretty good at what it does. All right, folks. Well, if you've stuck with me to this point in the video, thank you so much. I want to make sure that I answer all your questions. So if you guys have more questions about the rigged Ultra Swing Arm, please put them down in the comment section below. And also, if you haven't actually subscribed to my channel yet, please do so, because it's with your support that allows me to keep this thing going and obviously bring you great content. So all that being said, guys, I will catch you on the next one.